Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that phrase even means. I'm Kane, and joining me this evening are Ryan and Matty. Firstly, gents, how's the weekend?
Good, mate. Evening, Ryan. Grand final weekend this weekend, so always a good one on the calendar for a few bevies and watching the game. So I was happy the Tigers got up. I was barracking for them. So, yeah, cracking weekend.
One-way traffic after about quarter time, unfortunately, for the neutrals out there. Wasn't much by way of entertainment watching that.
No, it was pretty a one-sided affair.
Almost more entertaining was watching the celebrations on Swan Street afterwards via Twitter. They looked intense and wild.
Yeah, wild's putting it mildly.
What are you, Ryan? How far did you run this weekend?
Yeah, good weekend. I'm on the tapering towards the marathon now. So I only did an 8K pace session this weekend, do an interval session midweek, 12Ks next weekend, and then nothing heading into the 42. So after 32Ks last weekend, 8Ks was an absolute blessing. And yes, I think if you weren't a Richmond supporter, after about half-time, the AFL Grand Final was pretty average, but still very happy to have the public holiday down in Melbourne on the Friday for it. Love the fact that the state has a public holiday for a Grand Final.
And for a horse race.
Yes, we're a very, very sporting state, which is nice.
Now, this week we're starting a new segment on Daddy Eats Last called Dad Joke of the Week. There's two dads here, and one not quite a dad, so I'm sure Ryan's jokes will be better than ours. But Matty, you've got the very first dad joke of the week for us.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned to you guys about I had to leave my dentist recently. He hurt my feelings.
Why did he hurt your feelings?
Oh, dear me. There you go. Dad joke of the week.
There it is.
Well, so we're on to something a bit more serious tonight. Work commute and how you can pass time and maybe be productive on your work commute. One of our listeners wrote in and he has a 1 hour plus commute to work and back and often gets home sometimes after the kids are in bed and leaves roughly when the kids are getting up. So on the weekends, he doesn't have a lot of time. That's the only time he really has. But he's got an hour plus in transit. So you guys, either of you ever been in transit for that long on a daily basis, an hour sort of each way? And what did you do to pass the time?
Yeah, when I used to live in Melbourne, when I lived at Mum and Dad's and worked in the CBD, it was a good hour and 20 minutes each way on the train. So, but then that was before I had kids, so it was a little bit different. But I'd probably just pass the time by reading a book or watching some stuff on the phone. But as a dad now, I'd probably take advantage of that time in a much different way. So whether or not it's looking at what I'm doing on the weekend to try and, save a bit of time there if I can, or, just trying to get some daily life admin done in the hour and 20 minutes I would have had. Obviously at the moment I don't have much of a work commute, but I'll be interested to see if you boys have also had a work commute and what you guys have done.
Ryan?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. We made a conscious decision to live in South Bank, which for those who are in Melbourne is literally 15-minute walk to Flinders Street Station, which is the main train station of Melbourne CBD. So I'm about 30 minutes walk from one of our offices, 20 minutes walk from another, and I teach at a university that by the time that I walk to the train and catch a train, again, 30 minutes. So everything's within 30 minutes, but we made that decision to eliminate a work commute, working some very long hours and some stressful jobs. But in my first year at uni, I was living over in Western Australia, out in Joondalup, and went to Curtin University. So there was 45K between the two, maybe 40, but quite a distance. And that was an hour and a half commute. So travelled one train all the way into the city, had to get get a train and then out to Curtin University. And I really passed the time by studying at that time. It was only for a year, and then I sort of moved out of home and got much closer to uni. But I sort of passed the time through working, and I caught up with a friend of mine, and she lives out in Ballarat. And she actually said that they made the decision to live out in Ballarat because they catch the train in. It's about an hour 10 one way. And yeah, she finds that she gets a lot of work done, and she found it was a lot more productive than a 40-minute train ride commute that was packed with commuters and she couldn't get anything done. So she actually took the decision to move further out so that she would have a longer commute, but actually be able to use the time productively. So yeah, I certainly did when I had a long commute, but we've actually made a life conscious choice at this stage in our life without kids to not like a commute. We have targeted reducing our commute purposefully.
Now, do your friend who's in Ballarat, do they have kids?
They have a lot of fur babies, is what they explain to me, but they're actually trying for their first.
Okay.
So she's actually part of a same-sex couple down there. She will be the one who's predominantly working, but yeah, they're working to get pregnant with her partner there, and they bought their place out in Ballarat for the intention to have a family and all that strategy.
Yep. Now, do they commute together at the moment or separately?
No, separately. So her partner does work locally.
Okay, I think that might make a bit of a difference with regards to that as well. If you're both commuting together for an hour each way, it's almost like working working with your partner. It can be hard yakka sometimes, just sitting there and when you can't just look at your phone all the time like people seem to. I've had really mixed work commutes, to be honest. I've had everything from like what you've got now, Ryan, where I could be at work in sort of 8 minutes if I was riding. I've had a commute like you, Maddie, which was like an hour and 20 minutes. And my work commute now is about 5 seconds where I just roll into the home office. But when I was, and this is relevant to the listener who wrote in, when my work commute was an hour and 10, this was going back a little while ago. I think I probably had to just pack the CD Walkman and a whole bunch of CDs, and then I could flip through the CDs. That's how long ago that may have been the first time I was doing it. But it was also before email. So back then it was you literally reading books, or you'd maybe take some work home and read that or do some study in the train, because I was studying taxation at the time. So that's what I do now. That's what I used to do then. Now I'm very much the opposite. I'll probably listen to a podcast, and Daddy Eats Last is a good podcast if anyone's thinking about a podcast to listen to. Or try to learn something, or if I'm not going to be home and I'm not going to see the little fella, I'll actually FaceTime him and see how he's going, or I'll call my parents, or call one of my nanas or something like that. So I'll try to use that time and just mix and match on the particular day, whether it's going to be something, I guess, a bit more educational, or just call family and have a chat. And ideally, if I haven't seen the little fella all day, I'll try to video him.
I think as well, not even like restricting to the work commute, but for the said listener having a couple of kids, I think if you try to achieve what you would potentially be doing on a weekend that's stopping you maybe from spending time with the kids or doing an activity for yourself. So maybe on the weekend you need to, as an example, go and get groceries, or you need to, do some chores around the house. Maybe if you try and tackle them once you do get home, you're going to be, you're getting home late anyway, and you may not be seeing the kids. So, it's a shit time of the day anyway. Get that stuff that potentially you're going to be doing on the weekend done during the week. And then you've really got two whole days to sort of do at your own leisure, like spend the time with your kids, do an activity for yourself, get out there and, and do whatever sort of you want to do.
do need to do some online shopping as well. You could probably do his Woolies, definitely do a Woolies or a Coles order in one of those hour commutes if he's on a train or something like that. Or if you're not on the train, you can talk it into your phone and then log it later on. So you could use some of that time, at least one of those trips, to actually do a chore, which means you don't have to do it on the weekend, because it's nothing worse than when you get to sort of Friday night and you go, oh God, I've got a whole weekend of chores ahead of me.
Yeah, and that's a real, that's an easy one straight off the bat. Get the groceries delivered sort of on a weeknight, so then they don't have to wait around on a weekend to get them. What else do you think? What else?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know two fellas up in Queensland, actually, your neck of the woods, Matty, who do some work for one of our companies. And they actually live on the Gold Coast, but they have a healthcare clinic not too far out of Brisbane. And so they actually 3 days a week commute probably an hour 10, hour 20 one-way drive to get to that clinic. And then obviously drive home. Now, the fact that they can condense that into 3 days is good. But talking with those guys, they say, I go, what do you do? Because I understand the ability to be productive if you're commuting on a train. And that's why my friend who went to Ballarat gets the V line, she's guaranteed a seat, got some internet, gets to actually punch out, as she says, she punches out an hour and 10 minutes worth of work before she even hits the office. So she can then leave a bit earlier than that. But if you're actually driving and you've got to concentrate on the road and that, how do you make that time productive? And they say they just listen to podcasts. And they go, because they're dads of families, I think one has 2, one has 3 kids, and they're all reasonably young. And they go, we have no time to ourselves. So they go, this is the time where we load up the car, we listen to podcasts, we actually get to learn, we get to, grow themselves, I suppose, or just even listen to a podcast they might find interesting or fun. And if you're listening to this one, hello, fellas. But they, use it as a bit of self-development time, I suppose, or a bit of time for themselves. And they find that really productive. And they actually find that the time goes pretty quickly. Or they'll just get on the phone and Bluetooth some business calls or some work calls, or they'll actually just call, as you said, Kane, they'll just call the kids and the family and chat to them and see what they're doing and that kind of thing. So they've been able to, which I found impressive, because driving and finding a way to be productive whilst actually having to drive for an hour 10, hour 20, I would imagine is quite difficult. And sure enough, they get a lot out of that time.
Yeah, I think there's that difference again between if it's public transport or if you're actually driving a vehicle yourself. And there's obviously, as you just outlined, different things that you can do in those different modes of transport. Where if I'm driving, I'll often narrate things as well. So as long as there's no one else in the car, I'm not embarrassing anyone, I'll actually narrate anything that I need. Like if I need to draft an email, or if I'm thinking something, or if I've, on a Friday I'll write a blog post. If I'm driving, I'll sometimes do that. So just depending on what your work day or other things look like, you can actually use that time, even if you're driving, to do something along those lines. So something as easy like, Ryan, you love to journal. You could talk a journal. You could do lots of different things while you're driving, just getting things, I guess. So you're utilising that time to, I guess, relaxation is great and you definitely need to relax, but actually utilising that time to help you relax by either making a to-do list or, taking care of something you're going to have to take care of later on.
I have actually found myself driving on the odd days where I have to go between a number of offices. If I'm not using that time to make and knock off all my phone calls, or actually calling family and friends if I've got the opportunity, depending on time zones back in Perth. But I will actually, don't call me crazy, but talk to myself at times, similar to what you were saying there, Kane, in terms of talking to myself about what do I have to do this week? What do I want to do today? What is something that's just stuck on my mind that when I get out of the car that I can action? So narrating, but also slightly crazily talking to yourself. But anyone who does that, it'll hopefully this normalizes that for you a little.
Yeah, because the last thing you want to do when you get out of a car trip, if you've been driving for an hour and 20 minutes, inevitably through peak hour traffic, which in Melbourne is awful, in Sydney it's worse, but in Melbourne it's bad enough. Like the last thing you want to do is kind of get out of the car and just go, I've got so many other things I need to do now because I've been in the car for an hour and 10, or if there's been, a traffic jam an hour and a half, but it should have been an hour and you've lost time. So the worst thing you can do is actually be getting out of the car and being anxious that you haven't done something. So if you can somehow nip that in the bud while you're in motion, it's really helpful. I guess the other part of that is, as you mentioned before, Ryan, you've actually taken a conscious decision to reduce your commute, and that's possible for some people and some roles. And much the same with what I do now. My commute is literally a 5-second walk from the kitchen into the study. So, yeah, I guess depending on what you do and how you do it, you can also potentially ask a boss to work from home for a part of a day if your job allows you to do that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're not in a position to sort of move closer to where you do work, or that's probably the next best thing is asking for a 4-day week, or even a 4-day week, or even work from home 1 day a week, because a lot of us are working potentially 10, 12-hour days, and whether or not we're 100% productive in that 10 to 12-hour period, or we're just sitting at FaceTiming, having a presence in the office, potentially there's a chance to work from home, or even get some tasks done during that work day to sort of break it up a little bit, because no one is sitting there, smashing out 100% productivity between, 7 and 7, or even 7 and 5.
Yeah, I go through phases where I set timers around productivity, and I'll set a timer for, it's generally 25 minutes and 5 off. But sometimes I'll make it sort of 30 minutes and 5, and that's 30 minutes is kind of the perfect amount of time to do a load of washing. So if it's a nice sunny day, it'll be okay. 30 minutes of work, 5 minutes off to hang out the washing, back for 30 minutes. And if there's a couple loads of washing to be done, then it's basically done during those times, because I know I'm not going to be productive for a whole hour. I know 30 minutes is kind of my cap before I maybe zone out or start thinking of something else to do. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If you can arrange with your employer to work from home a day, that saves 2 hours of travel in the listener's case. 2 hours a day just nonsense travel. Like, that's an amazing time saving, and you can use it to do things which you don't have to do on the weekend.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you just hit the nail on the head there. Like doing that washing, that example you gave then, that's cutting down your chores on the weekend, and you're also getting, like you said, 2 hours extra a day, which, if you were smart, you'd apply that 2 hours in an activity for yourself, because it's time you're really getting back in the bank.
Yeah, and I'll make when I make my lunch at lunchtime, I'll chop up stuff for dinner. So it's basically, okay, instead of making my dinner the night before or putting together a sandwich, I'll make something nice for myself for lunch, which won't take too long and not too bad in the kitchen, and I'll chop up stuff for dinner as well. So it's kind of pre-prepping and rolling forward. So it's amazing, even if it's 1 day a week, just being able to work from home. And most workplaces are generally quite good at allowing you to do that now if you in that sort of environment where you can do it. It's a massive time saver.
Yeah, I sort of am able to ring not 1 day a week with my schedule, but sort of one every 2 to 3 weeks. And that, like you said, Kane, realistically 10, 15 minutes for lunch. And you think of, say, a lunch hour or whatever, you can get some washing done, you might be able to vacuum the place. Like, that day always seems to free up my weekend, but also be highly productive. But even those that can't do a day work from home, I think there's something that we kind of need to challenge the concept of the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 6 or whatever it is, because everybody commutes in at that time, which causes those peak hour problems, which means that a normal 30-minute commute might be a 55-minute commute. So even if you can't work a day from home, just talking to your employer and going, look, what is the chance of 2 days a week here? I get up early, I get in the office at 7 and leave at 3:30. Is that all right? Or, I know that we've got this project and we don't have to be on site until 11. Like, why do I need to come to the office beforehand? Can't I head straight there? But I'll go from 11 till 7 type thing. So just trying to also, whenever I do have to travel, I try and get outside of those key peak times. And we've got, like, our head office is over in London with one of the companies that I'm involved with. And I talk to those people all the time, and they're constantly working from home or working from another office or working remotely, because they say, like, London is Sydney on steroids in terms of a commute. And they go, the whole space, the whole workforce there has kind of acknowledged and gone, it's actually really unproductive. And I think Australia will eventually get there, especially with Sydney the way that it's been, Melbourne certainly getting up there. But yeah, if you can't work from home, how can you possibly change your work hours or challenge against the 9 to 5, so that maybe you do get to leave at 3:30, you're there at 4:30, and you do get plenty of time with your kids and you get to do dinner and all that kind of thing. But you've just got to get up a bit earlier in the morning.
Maddie, you used to be a huge advocate of this, mainly because if you arrived in the CBD in Melbourne before 7 a.m. and it's now 7:15 by train, it was free. So as long as you cleared the gates of public transport by 7:15, it's free transport. So you're not actually paying for a train ticket on the way in, which is a sort of $4 or $5 saving a day. It's in Melbourne. It's a wonderful thing.
Well, free coffee.
Yeah, free coffee. That's right. I did do that a lot actually from Watsonia, which was only I think about 40 minutes came on the train. It really hurt in the winter though because it was so cold to be on the platform at 6 a.m. But it was great. Like there was a seat guaranteed every time because not many people were doing it, and you got to work at 7 and you had a good hour before people were rolling in, and it was just so productive. There was just no one there hassling you. You could think. There was not much noise. It was really great. I'd advocate that.
It really, actually, I could really see how well you utilize that time as well. Like your ability to play stick cricket, really went through the roof.
I improved dramatically when I was rolling in at 7.
You used to get bowled or get hit in the head all the time, and then like a couple of times I saw you just smacking sixes off your nose and stuff. Every ball was a 6.
Well, if you put in the time, the rewards are there.
Not to make you guys feel too old, but fellas, I was playing stick cricket when I was in year 8. That was when it was big. Being in year 8, I got quite good at it as well.
I felt old enough saying that I had a CD Walkman.
But I think
go on then.
If you think of it's potentially an uncomfortable conversation that a lot of people don't have. They go with the norm. They go with what is done. But for the price of possibly an uncomfortable conversation with your employer to go, look, is there any flexibility around some different work hours or even work from home starting once a month? The payoff as somebody that has the ability to work flexible hours, albeit certainly work a lot more than a standard 40-hour week, which so many people do now because we're so hyper connected. We're so with phones and emails and internet and obviously that kind of thing. Everybody seems to be going a bit beyond those standard work hours, kind of asking for a bit of flexibility in the same way. And if you're doing good work, then just point to the good work. But I think the price of that uncomfortable conversation for the reward of being able to possibly work from home or possibly just get out of those massively peak transit hours, the payoff's very, very high.
That is a very, very good point. If you don't ask, you'll never get. We really hope tonight has helped one of our listeners. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at team@daddyeatslast.com. We're happy to discuss anything that any listener wants us to have a chat about. But that wraps it up for this week. Remember to subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes if you haven't already. And while you're there, please leave a review. Also, tell your mates about the podcast, especially if they are guys. Most of all, thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last and another really bad dad joke. Catch you next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.